Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast in association with Andy's Mad Man Club. Lads, it's okay to talk. As you can see on the screen, this episode we are 50% British and 50% Irish, but as always, 100% Giants. Bit of a bonus episode, this one, as it's the kind of second episode in a off season that we don't tend to do 2 episodes in a week. So it's a strange one for us both, but it's also probably been one of our most intensive podcasts to plan for in the terms of research. So, Kev, how you doing, and how much are you looking forward to this one?
Yeah, I've been doing really well. I suppose I thought in the off season that things were supposed to quiet down, and we're not supposed, there's no football, so how can we put out 2 podcasts in a week? But I'm actually chuffed to be on again, being on a Friday night here, doing this pod. I've been looking forward to this one because it's something we haven't done before in our time, and I just think it's a really interesting exercise to do, to basically see, as the tag says on the other side there, look, can we fix the Giants?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an eye-opening week and a half. We'll get into that a little bit later. We've got Joe Schoen's presser to kind of have a look at first. So before we begin, if you're watching this live on YouTube or on Facebook, please do join in with the conversation in the comments. You can now also join in on X in the comments, and we will see them too. Subscribe if you haven't already on YouTube, and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us get visibility out there. Now, before we talk about what we've been cooking up in our little chef outfits, let's talk about Joe Schoen. So on Tuesday, Joe Schoen spoke to the media that has assembled at the Combine in Indianapolis. Let's chat about some of the big talking points that came out from his presser. So, Kev, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I just want to touch on, the Barkley and McKinney. Sheehan spoke about Barkley and McKinney and his opening before any questions had even been asked. Most likely preempting all of those questions, so he used his time better. He mentioned that he would be speaking to Barkley's reps during the week, that was planned, so that was going to happen. Regarding X, he had said that X's agent, David Mulugeta, would be meeting with him today on Friday at the beginning to begin the talks, and they would commence. So it's very interesting there. I mean, we obviously want to get deals done with these guys. And just to go off topic a little bit, did you see the interview the X done recently, the other night with one of the Giants beat writers? He was on his podcast.
Leonard.
Pat Leonard, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't watched it all. I've watched half of it. I watched the first half of it. I don't know if it was just me, but X did not come across how I expected him to come across. I thought he was quite a humble person, very interesting, obviously big fan of the arts. And yeah, I don't know, it almost shocks me a little bit. And I guess that's the perception that you have of footballers, and it's something that Pat Leonard said, is, most people see you with a helmet and shoulder pads on. They don't see the real you. So yeah, I thought it was a really good interview with what I've heard so far.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit eye-opening. He very much wants to get paid like a top safety. That does come across. But he said as well he wanted to be a one-team player. He wanted to, stay with the Giants. He said, he played for the same high school his career. He went to Alabama. He had opportunities to leave Alabama and go other places when he wasn't getting playing time. He decided he wanted to stick that out because he wanted to stay there. And I got the feeling that he really, really does want to be a Giant. So it kind of seeing that has kind of made me a bit more optimistic about talks going forward than I maybe was. I was on the fence whether he'd stay or go, but I'm kind of leaning towards him staying now.
Yeah, agreed. So next up on his agenda, he kind of, as Kev said, he touched on the Barkley and X stuff before he really got into the questions, and lo and behold, the first question was about Daniel Jones and the quarterback plans. And as expected, Joe kind of gave that non-committal answer that you would expect, like the PR answer at the moment. You hold your cards close to your chest. He mentioned that they know they'll have to add one, and whether it will be a vet or in the draft, but did kind of reiterate that it can be via both, and that just because they sign a veteran in free agency doesn't preclude them from taking one in the draft, and vice versa. So just because they're planning to take one in the draft, which is looking very likely, it wouldn't surprise me if a vet is picked up. There were weird, in my opinion, weird quotes from Joe saying that he was going to meet with Tyrod's representatives. I'm not sure I'm quite a fan of that, but we all know my view on Tyrod. There were also follow-up questions about Daniel's ACL recovery, whether Schoen still had faith in Jones, and whether the bar for the starting quarterback was to get you to a Super Bowl, and whether Jones could do that in that sense. I mean, what did you make of his comments on Jones? Because I know a lot of fans have read into it as much as they possibly can, because that's what they will do, but he didn't really say a lot, let's be honest.
He didn't. He was very much like, do you believe in Daniel Jones? Yes, I believe in Daniel Jones. Can Daniel Jones take you to Super Bowl? He goes, I believe in Daniel Jones as our starting quarterback. He very much sort of hammered that home. And, just from picking up some stuff on X and stuff, some chatter going around, they do think Jones still can be a very, very good quarterback. But they are aware that, like, he played 4 games last year. We have to remember that, Yes, he played badly in them, but it was only 4 games. He didn't really have a chance to turn the. He started and finished 4 games last year, and he just bringing Tyrod back would be an interesting move. But I just think his injury history as well. He doesn't protect himself. Do you know what I mean? So he always puts himself in harm's way. I just think we will address the quarterback position in later on in this discussion. But I just think with Daniel Jones, it's very much like they believe that they can win with Daniel Jones, and they're going to try and pit people around him. But I think they're very wary of his injury history with the necks, the shoulders, and knees. So I think they will try and cover themselves, with bringing in a veteran quarterback. And if the opportunity arises to get a quarterback that they believe they can develop, I think they'll do that as well.
It's interesting because I was watching Talking Giants. They dropped a new pod earlier with Jordan Renan, and one of the things that Bobby said was, well, kind of, if you think about it, Evan, I can't remember, was it Bobby? It might have been Justin. It was one of the two said, well, it's kind of, if you think about it, Evan Neal's in the same boat because he's only 2 years into his NFL career, but he has that perception now of being injury prone, just like Jones. And just like Jones is under pressure at his position, and there's talk about whether he could be replaced. So there's a lot of that around, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like Evan Neal is getting that tag of a bust now. Do you know what I mean? Taking 7th overall in that draft that we took Thibodeau, and we were hailing the fact that we were getting a franchise tackle and a franchise edge rusher, and Evan Neal hasn't quite lived up to that. Now they've still been playing him at right tackle. They still believe in him there. And it will be interesting to see with this new offensive line coach, and if Neal can stay healthy, in camp and stuff like that, it'll be a fierce fight for the offensive line, and especially that right side tackle.
So, conversation kind of moved on from there. Kev, what did he speak about next?
Well, it kind of evolved from Jones and up to potential trade up into the top 3. Sheehan said that free agency will be set the table for some of the decisions. But he also mentioned that in order to trade up, you must be comfortable with the player you're trading up for, which may lead to the fact that the Giants may wait to being on the clock. He was also asked about being comfortable with the state of the roster to give up picks. It would cost to trade up. He mentioned that it was hard to answer prior to free agency, but they haven't had the exposure to the prospects yet. Now I find this very, very interesting because they've seen film. And you can only see so much on film. They want to get around these guys. They want to be in their faces. They want to talk ball with them. They want to build relationships, and they want to see how they carry themselves. So there's no chance of us sort of move if we decide to move. There's no chance of us moving right now until sort of all the chips have fallen, and these guys have actually got on to see these players properly, up close and personal, and have these interviews. And they're obviously interviewing with all these players in the combine this weekend. So they'll be interested to come about that. But I was thinking about this the other day as well. And I was thinking, like, if any of those three quarterbacks, the Giants believe that they're that good to move up for, like they're that good to move up for, why would any of those three teams in 1, 2, or 3 not pick them then? Do you know what I mean? So I kind of think it'll be a bit of a stalemate there. It's like either they're not good enough to go up for, so don't go up for them, or they are good enough to go up for, and the three teams that are currently there will just pick them because they're that good. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I saw there's so much chatter at the moment. This is what I love about the combine. It's kind of moved away from just being an on-field exercise, and there's just so much that happens. You know, the interviews and the first chance that the GMs and the head coaches have all had the opportunity to be in the same room together or the same building together, really in a business environment since, probably even pre-season last year, because they don't often all get together at the same time. I totally agree with what you're saying in regards to if they're that good, you're not moving away. And it's quite a rarity as well that we have three teams at the top who all need a quarterback. I mean, the Bears don't need one, but they obviously aren't sold on Justin Fields. And I think that him going to Atlanta is the worst kept secret outside of, as who was it? Who said it earlier? I can't remember. There was one of the SNY guys. I've forgotten his name. He said earlier the second worst kept secret in the combine is that the Giants want to move up for a quarterback. So, I think Fields has gone to Atlanta. So the Bears are going to take Caleb. I'd be very shocked if they don't. Why would Washington pass if they don't believe in Sam Howell? And the Patriots don't have anyone. Unless they're going to go for Russell Wilson or another vet in free agency will be the key, won't it?
Yes.
If it turns around and they say the Giants have traded up to 3 the day before free agency, you know damn well that the Patriots have got a quarterback that they liked in free agency. That's how it will come down to it.
Oh, the free agency would be massive. It'd be so much of a tell. Because I kind of feel like if the Giants go out in free agency and say they sign a Michael Pittman, or one of those other top wide receivers, and then sign a top offensive lineman like a tackle of some kind, that would kind of lead me to believe that then we're putting our ducks in a row to start to give up capital to move up now.
Yeah, I mean, Darren said, we're just going back to obviously Daniel Jones, that Darren said there, surely the biggest thing with DJ is his mental state. Those last couple of games before he was injured, he looked terrified. I mean, I'm not defending the man, but I'd be shitting bricks if I was behind that bloody offensive line myself. So, especially before he was injured for the season, obviously he got coming back with a damaged neck, and you're like, brilliant. I've got Evan Neal. Some of the others on the line blocking for me doesn't exactly fill you with confidence. So, lastly, on the Joe Schoen presser, let's talk about his comments on the salary cap, because he was asked that if it changed his perception of using the franchise or transition tags, which he kind of did allude to. Yes, it could be done, and he said that when he was speaking about Barkley, that the franchise tag is obviously in play there. Not that you really want to use it, because any time that you're blocking out a big chunk of money year one is just not a good business decision, really, unless you don't have another option. He did mention that when he opened up the email with the cap number, he couldn't believe how much it had gone up. And he said that a lot of his staff were kind of on vacation and weren't really in the building, and they had to quickly reconvene as they were planning conservatively in the sort of 241 to 243 million range. And obviously it was a pleasant surprise when it came in at the number that it did. But, as a whole there, Kev, there isn't anything shocking, despite the fans, obviously, on X trying to read into every little morsel, as they always will do. But what are your takeaway thoughts as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Joe Schoen gave much away. Kind of a lot of the answers were what we were expecting. It's kind of interesting the salary cap one though. You said they were expecting around the range of 241, 243, and now it's 255. So that's an extra what 12, 14 million that they weren't expecting. I mean, that's if you
Couple of
wanted to keep
players.
Saquon. Well, it's a couple of players, but also there's your tag for Barkley straight away. Like, and you can
Yeah.
move on with the rest of your plans. I mean, I kind of look at it like that, but also it does bring another 2 or 3 players into the mix. So I find that quite interesting. I mean, like, I'm interested to see if we start to hear anything about negotiations. I mean, there's been rumors that Barkley is gaining a lot of interest from the Texans, the Houston Texans. He's been speaking with CJ Stroud, and I've kind of heard a lot of people suggesting that it would be a great landing spot there for him. They've got CJ Stroud on a rookie deal for another 4 years, so to bring Barkley in for on a 3-year deal and slightly overpay him will kind of counterbalance that. So I can kind of see that happen. They've got lots of cap to play with as well. But I'm just sort of interested to see like what comes out of the combine after these meetings, because we kind of want to know what's happening with X and Saquon, don't we? We kind of want to know. Look, are you guys coming back? Are you going to be Giants for a foreseeable time? And then can we start to get our other ducks in the row and other like positions to go after? So yeah, I mean, he didn't give too much away, but there was enough there to sort of go, okay, it's interesting going forward.
Yeah,
big year for him though.
Oh yeah, massive year. And I just kind of want to touch on something that, again, the Talking Giants and Jordan Renan were talking about. They were talking about X, and then they were talking about Barkley. And they said, if you gave Joe Schoen truth serum, do you think that he would quite openly admit that he hopes another team comes in and pays Barkley something that we can't match? It makes no sense for us. So then he can go, sorry, it's just a bit rich for me. I'm out, sort of thing. It wouldn't surprise me if that's like almost like a nice case scenario, not the best case scenario, but a nice case scenario where he can just go, you know what, well done, you've been paid. Some team was brave, I won't call them stupid, brave enough to pay you 12 to 14 a year for a few years. And Joe just goes, you know what, we've got other issues here. That's too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen actually valued running backs like other teams do. Anyway, I mean, they kind of came into the situation with Saquon Barkley. Obviously not his draft pick. I kind of think like you hope it's 2 scenarios. You hope it's Saquon tests the market. No one's giving him 10 plus, like no one. So he kind of comes back to the Giants. The Giants come in at 9-10 million per year, and kind of a goodwill, achievable bonuses or whatever. And it's kind of like, okay, so he's back for around 10 million a year, 9 million, something like that. Something palatable that they might not want to go to, but they can live with. Or the other good situation is exactly like you said. Someone comes in with 15 mil per year, and just like Joe Schoen goes, whoa, we went as high as we could, but that's just a little bit of a stretch for us. And oh my God, we couldn't do that. What you don't want though is to someone come in or him to go to another team for around 11 million per year, because then that was I think 11, 12 might be a little bit of a stretch for the Giants. But I can definitely see another team give them that. Then it's like, ooh, what, you couldn't go from 9 to 11, Joe Schoen, just to keep this sort of like star running back.
Though, if you think about it, it was only $1 million between the franchise tag and what they were offering last year. So, the precedent has been set there. And as Steve said, it doesn't help Saquon with the list of free agent running backs this time. Not too many teams need somebody there. It's very true. There are not many teams. It wouldn't surprise me over the next few years. This is me just kind of thinking out loud. But over the next few years, if the market kind of does diminish and then maybe levels out, but more teams are much happier having 2 running backs as opposed to that 1 lead back. I feel like that's the way it's gonna go. So it's less tread on the tires, longer careers, but less money up front, longer over because you get the career extended.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well. But also, did you hear Joe Schoen's presser? He kind of, I thought he was not tip his cap a bit, but I thought, oh, has he slipped up here when he kind of said about the running back market being like being basically lots of good players in the running back market, and he actually name dropped Zach Moss and Singletary, who two players that he was part of the front office team that drafted, and those two players are free agents this year. I mean, I did mention it on what the free agent podcast we done. You bring Singletary in for 4 or 5. Do you know what I mean? For 1 year to see how he goes, instead of bringing Saquon back on a 12 million tag. So I don't know if it was a Freudian slip there or he just named dropped a couple of players that he knew. But I thought that was a little bit interesting.
Absolutely. Right, let's do it. The main event, the reason for all the research, the reason that me and Kev have probably spoken on WhatsApp more times in the last 3 days than we have done in the last 2 years.
Have you enjoyed it though?
Oh, absolutely. It's been real good fun. So last Monday, Monday not gone, Monday before, Kev sent a message into the group saying, just listen to the He's a Giant pod. They've done a really good episode about fixing the Giants. Exact episode I wanted to do. And from there, we kind of got talking about how we could do it. Is it possible? And 1 week after learning how to use over the cap calculator, for me to learn how to structure contracts and what the different free agent types mean, I think we kind of have enough of a grasp that we could do it. Then we just had to agree what we wanted to do. And that kind of starts with Daniel Jones, doesn't it? That was our first conversation was, right, he's under contract. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't shaft the cap in a way that says get rid of him because that's not what we're going to do. The roster holes are vast. So let's build around Jones to begin with. Stay put in the draft. Don't trade up. We'll pick at 6 and we'll see where it takes us. So here you go. This is how Kev and I would fix the Giants, starting with cuts and restructures. I'm going to take cuts. Kev will talk restructures in a second. So we start off and we're literally going to go through. We've got all the cap numbers. We're telling you exactly how much we're spending, how much cap we have left, how much cap is at the end, everything. So we start off with 32 million, just over 32 million cap space. The first thing we do is cut Mark Lewinsky for 5.6 million. Now, Lewinsky lost his job after week 1's collapse against Dallas after recording a 1.0 PFF pass block grade. And he only... it is, isn't it? But imagine giving him a 1, not giving him a 0. Like, the 1's worse.
Yeah.
I think the 1's worse. Because it's like, you maybe did something right.
You were a turnstile for the whole game.
Yeah. He only returned to the starting lineup due to injury. The move adds 1.5 million dead cap money to the cap space, but saves just under 5.7 really in total. And the second one, this was one of my early shouts, I think, was to cut Aaron Robinson. Robinson's 1.36 million cap saving might seem small. However, considering we've paid him more than 3.8 million since 2021, and he's played 11 of the possible 53 that he should have been available for, it is not money well spent anymore, and I would rather give that 1.36 million towards a better player.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, put him on that bus. He looked like a promising player when we drafted him, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he just hasn't been able to play well at all. So those are the cuts we made. We decided we do some restructuring as well. Now, one of the discussions was Daniel Jones is a candidate for restructuring. He was restructured last year to move some money around, but we decided with the cap increase and the 2 players we did end up restructuring that we would have enough cap room to be able to do the things we want to do. So we decided to leave Daniel Jones' contract alone, and we decided to move over to Andrew Thomas. Now, Andrew Thomas, we basically converted 13 million. We created, 17.5 million we created by restructuring him. And basically what that's doing is taking his salary from next season, putting it into a bonus, and then you're spreading it out throughout the rest of the years of the contract. Now, to take money and spread it over 4 or 5 years for Andrew Thomas, you're only adding a couple of million each year, and as the cap's going up, so it's definitely someone that will be here, someone who's a good player, someone that's proven. So we decided to do that with him and Dexter Lawrence because these are pillars of the team. And, the way the contracts are structured, they'll actually seem quite cheap in about 3 or 4 years' time anyway. But both players are due to count for a count against the cap for combined 45.75 million, which is almost 18% of the total team salary cap. By restructuring the two deals to the maximum and over the cap projects that would free up an additional 27.8 million. With Dex under contract until 27 and Thomas until 29, future cap increases should negate the portions of the money pushed forward. And we were talking about Jones, he's got a 47 million cap hit, but we decided to leave that alone, and we'll just sort of swallow that this year because we may need to cut him free next year. So if we do decide that, we want the dead cap to be as minimal as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they weren't the only cuts and restructures we looked at. There were plenty of other options. We could have restructured a Karake. That would freed up an additional 5 million. But with us now having 67 million free in cap space, it's probably not needed. Waller, Slayton, Pinnock, Basham, all potential cuts that we had conversations over. Lawrence Cager left, so probably looks to bear without Waller, plus the dead money versus cap saving, probably not worth it to replace him. You're not going to replace him for the money. Slayton, you could save 6 million, but you'd be pressed to find a replacement for less, especially one that understands the Giants and really understands everything that Dable and Shane are building right now. Pinnock, exactly the same. And after last season, you want to keep somebody who was a starter for most of the games. And yes, you would be able to save 6 million, but can you replace Pinnock for 6 million? Probably not. And Basham was one that we spoke about, 1.4 million if you cut Basham. Didn't really do a lot last season, but he sits in a weak outside linebacker, sort of the end room. And really, for that kind of money, it's not worth cutting him. He does add value at 1.4 million.
I know, and
in a
bring
weird
him
way.
in for exactly. But bring him in for an off season. He hasn't had that. We traded for him through at the beginning of the season or through the season. So for that type of price point, you'd sort of happily keep him on the team and sort of see where you go. And also just touch on something quickly as well, but the 51 rule in the preseason. So the 51 rule basically is, you allowed a 90 man roster. Now, of course, if you're accounting for all 90 players, you'd have no cap left because, so the kind of rule is before the start of the season is that only the highest paid 51 players actually count against the cap. So all those sort of back end roster guys, you bring guys in for like 1,900,000, they actually won't count against the cap because they'll be on the lesser paid guys. So just sort of, it's worth just noting that, just because you bring someone in at 900K or 1 million, a lot of the times that won't actually count against the cap because they will be 55th highest paid player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point to make sort of right now as well as we start to look at the free agent signings. The way that we've done these is that we've said how much we're going to sign them for, how long, what kind of bonuses we're giving them, but we also give you an idea of, the cap space we have left at the end. And that cap space might not reflect the deal that we've just said because of the fact that it's pushing players out of the 51 and it's only really the differential between the two contracts that's going to count. So if we leave it there with cuts and restructures, we move on to the next one.
Just again for the listeners, viewers, how much money are we starting with now before we start to go shopping in Harrods or other places?
Shopping in Harrods. We have 67.1 million to spend.
You wouldn't have thought that.
Chump change.
All right, let's spend John Mara's money.
All right, so we'll start off with the big guns, yeah? We'll re-sign Jacob Eason and is it Benton Whitley? Whitley. For 985,000 and 915,000 respectively, which takes our 67 million down to 66,700,000. It's not exciting. It's not sexy. All right.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Two cheap bodies who in Easter will provide an extra quarterback in camp, and while Jones recovers from his ACL operation, and in Whitley he bulks that numbers in that thin outside linebacker room. For those kind of numbers, if you end up cutting them, you're not going to miss it. Like they're two just easy re-signs. I think they were exclusive right free agents as well, so it's a no-brainer there. Into special teams, Casey Kreiter will re-sign Casey, $1.2 million, $150,000 bonus as well. And then Gunnar Olszewski, we will pop onto a 2-year contract, 1.2 million signing bonus. That's spread across the 2 years. Year 1, 1.125 million. Year 2, 1.8 million. Both of those deals taking us down to just over 65 million in cap space. Two of the more reliable sort of stewards of the special teams room last season. For Kreiter, it seems stupid not to keep the chemistry between him, Gano, and Gillen for another season. You don't fix what's not broken. And in the terms of what Kreiter brings to the table, not broken. And in Gunner's case, we need a reliable, consistent returner, and we actually need a returner for the first time in years. We actually had one. Don't get rid of that. He showed he is exactly what he is and more. And you really, for the money that you're talking there, you don't push your nose up at it.
100%, like two steady Eddie players that you just make sense, but they both earned contracts. Obviously, friend of the podcast, Casey, and Gunnar, said, he came in, he earned it. He just was steady, reliable, and that's exactly what we needed at that position.
Yep. Go on then, take us away with a couple more sexy ones.
So move on to the more sexier ones. So we re-signed McLeod again to just a 1.2 million contract. Takes us down to 64.89. McLeod was always a reliable backup when called upon, and outperformed starter Adoree Jackson, who, spoiler alert, is not coming back. Ooh. With the Giants cornerback room needing bodies, this was absolutely no-brainer. For reference, 1,055,000 2024 minimum for a 3-year player. Cornerback James Pierre was a restricted free agent last year with the Steelers and got 1.3. Another re-sign is Hodgins, again for 1,055,000. Takes us down to just over 64.5 million. Hodgins might not have had the 2023 that he wanted, but with Slayton and Wandale ahead of him, the depth chart, it took lesser share snaps with Hyatt. Shepard and Campbell's departures, though, will leave us thin, and Hodgins is a great backup to have. So happy to get those two back in. Again, you know what you're getting with these guys. The coaches know them, and they are reliable when called upon. And we did decide to re-sign Justin Pugh on a 1.2 million contract with 260k bonus and 100k per game bonus, taking it up to 1.7 mil. For some, it might be a divisive move, but for us, it was a bit of a no-brainer. The Giants' guard room consists of Izudu and McKeithen, two mid-round players going into their third seasons. Pugh gives the room a veteran backup rotational piece that offers invaluable behind-the-scenes tutorship and experience.
Absolutely. It's an interesting pivot from my assumption 2 weeks ago that Pugh would retire at the end of the season. And that was very quickly shot down by the man himself, who said that he wants to return. The New York Giants Rush guys had him on the podcast recently. Good listen, that one. Just as insightful as he was with us. We had a good little back and forth just about how much Pugh is valuable in ways that you wouldn't expect a football player to be valuable in your locker room. And it makes perfect sense. 3 more players. We'll go back and forth between the two of us on these 3. So I'll go first. Re-sign Isaiah Simmons. Could really be a Bowen decision, this one, but for us, he signs up for another season. Might not really jump out as a bona fide starter at any one position, but the versatility that he brings is something that the Giants have really valued. And as a pass rusher, he had his career best rating of 77.2, so there's obviously a niche there for him that we could pick out. With the Giants thin on rushers, that could be a rotational role that he could carve out. Now, we gave him 1.3 million signing bonus, 1.125 million salary, and a 50k per game bonus, which is, I think, is exactly the same as what he had last year on his contract, or at least somebody had a similar age, similar kind of standing in the game, had a similar sort of per game roster bonus there. So that takes us just under the 60 million cap space. Now we're really hitting into the big guns.
And just on Simmons as well, I think, like, again, he was traded for. So I think, like, if he has a good conversation with Bowen when Bowen comes in officially, I think, he could sign for another prove-it deal. So I do think, like, he could, if they have good conversations, he could go out and earn himself a more healthier contract next season if he has a good prove-it deal this year. So, look, we're going to do what we kind of all Giants fans want us to do. We're going to re-sign Xavier McKinney. And we're going to sign him to a $61.5 million contract over 4 years. With the additional cap money the NFL has bestowed upon the league, the Giants should retain McKinney, and that's exactly what we're going for here. The Giants haven't had a great record in retaining their own talent, but McKinney is a current captain and one of the best players in the league, and he's only 24 years of age. And we kind of touched on that earlier on, but I just want to, again, get your thoughts about this move.
Yeah, I mean, we went back and forth on this one. Not so much the re-signing, but kind of the money, wasn't it? At one point, I said 5 years, looking, just to, lift the hood up a little bit and take a look inside the engine as to what me and Kev really did here. This wasn't just us pulling numbers out of the hat. Like, we really did our research on this. We had a look at the other top 5 safeties, how their contracts were planned out. A lot of them signed their contract prior to the expiry of their deal. So kind of the 5-year contract was actually just an extension of their original rookie deal. And that's where we've come in at the 4-year mark because of the fact that McKinney's actually at the end of his contract. The money's backloaded, but as again we found out, contracts have money backloaded. That's just how they work. Your cap hit in year 1 is low. We're signing and we're signing a lot of players because a lot of players have left the Giants. So you might think, oh, it's an expensive contract, but we've gone 4 million year 1, 11.5 year 2, 12.5 year 3, 14.5 year 4 with a 15 million bonus spread across that. So it's a lot of money, but when you actually break it down, and me and Kev, neither of us are general managers or cap people working in the NFL. This is just our opinion on how it works. But I personally think that that's a pretty good deal. I mean, 61.5 million across 4 years?
Yeah, it comes to
quick maths off the top of my head. 14.6 around that.
It's 15.3.
15.3.
So it gets him over that 15 mil per year that people like to see on social media and stuff like that, although, he'd only count against the cap for, I don't know, 7 or 8 million in the first year. But, it's that sort of getting him across that. You kind of like, you're showing, okay, we don't think you're going to get 17, 18 million, but we're willing to go up to 15, at least break that barrier of around 15 per year. So I think it's a good contract for all. And it's definitely one I could see as signing.
Yeah, we I think we even had it higher at one point. And we were just kind of looking at it from a realism and a Joe Schoen kind of standpoint. I think we had it as high as 65 across the 4 years at one point. So we just kind of like nitpicking little millions here. And the Giants will do that because they will want the best value for their money. But they could also just push that kind of extra 4 million just to go, okay, sign on the dotted line. Because 4 million for X across 4 years, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Right, another one. This will upset this will upset Keith, who's already shown his colours last season when we were talking about this player. We are going to re-sign Saquon Barkley as part of our example here. 12 million signing bonus, 1.5 in the first year with a 2 million prorated bonus based on incentives. That's been an eye opener. Looking at 4 million in the second year with a 4 million bonus, and then 8.5 in the last year. So it's a 32 million deal across 3 years. I don't think this happens if the salary cap doesn't jump as far. I think if the salary cap was in that 145 range, me and Kev probably say no. And Barkley was one of those additions that we kind of came back to. We came back to it after we really started looking at the external players, and we went, actually, we probably need to bring Saquon back here. Signing Barkley to a longer-term deal with an out after 2 years kind of keeps the Giants' best offensive weapon in recent times on the team. And it also means that for Barkley, he maybe takes a slightly lower deal than he would want, but then he doesn't have to go against the myriad of other backs that have saturated this year's market and could saturate it even further than what we're anticipating here. So that's all of the Giant free agents.
But again, just to talk about Barkley as well, like it gets him to that 10.5 million per year average. I mean, it just gets him over that sort of like, you're getting double figures average per year. I mean, we were saying you can get out in the third year. I mean, I think like the third year we had him at 12 or 13 against the cap, but it only costs like 3 or 4 million to cut him. So you're saving like 8 or 9 million last year if you need to. So we did kind of structure with that in mind that, we're giving them the plus 10 million per year average, but also we've got out after 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Just as a player, he's already expressed his interest in staying with the Giants. So if you look at the kind of roster at this time, which is something we did throughout, is we really did keep an eye on the roster numbers and versus last year as well. There aren't many massive holes, but there are a few at kind of key positions. I mean, between centre and guard last year, there were 8 players on the roster who could really play either position. At this time, before we go into the external players, we only have 4 under contract. So it's less than half. And that's kind of where you don't realise that the Giants are quite maybe as light. I mean, at tackle, there's only Thomas and Neal outside of the developmental players on the practice squad. That's one area that really took a hit. Outside linebacker / defensive end, Thibodeau, Ojulari, Basham, Whitley doesn't exactly get the fires inside burning, does it? So there are still holes on this roster, but I think that's a really good start with the players who are known to the Giants, and then obviously we move forward onto the external players. Now, we have just under 46.5 million cap number here. It's about to get really tested to its limits, isn't it, Kev?
It is. And we could have gone crazy and gone like absolute mental. I mean, we kind of looked at the current roster, who's left and who we brought back, and we let a lot of dead wood go. I mean, we didn't bring back sort of like anyone we didn't think was deserving of it or a potential young player. But we decided that, we needed to get good players in. We couldn't really scrape the bottom of the barrel. We needed to make shrewd decisions. And one of the first things we looked at was, as you mentioned earlier about Bowen's kind of offense. It's not sort of blitz happy as Wink. It's more like the four down linemen go after it with the odd blitz. So we both discussed and we thought, right, we need Azeez Ojulari's play and injury history hasn't sort of been what we thought it would be over this course of his career. So we went for Bryce Huff, ex Jets player. We gave him a $68 million contract over 4 years, 20 million sign-on bonus, and then salary of 1.579, 17.5. And basically that would then take it down to just under 39 million. So the first major splash, that we saw, and it's a bit of a splash, to be honest. It's not huge. It's not the 20+ million, no, but it is like a decent amount of money you're giving him, because you are giving him 68 million over 4 years. And I'll let you do the quick math on year what that is per year. But it was ESPN's Matt Bone recently described Huff as a flamethrower off the edge. With the Giants shifting from Wink's defense onto Bowen's defense, they'll need some more reliable opposite to Kayvon Thibodeau. Huff has a pass win rate of 21.8% last season. Placed them at 1.6% above Dexter Lawrence, who was the Giants' with the highest pass rusher rate last season. He also had 10 sacks, only bettered by Tibbs, and his 45 hurries was equal to Dex and 18 above Thibodeau. This is a player who played under 50% of the snaps for the the Jets last year. So I think he's proven now. He was an undrafted free agent when the Jets signed him, but he's had a fantastic career for them. But they want to invest in their first round edge defender last year, Will McDonald, and they have other pieces, so they just couldn't sign him. And they also said this week at the combine that they wouldn't be placing the franchise tag on him. So I do believe he hits free agency, and I believe he's a player that we can go after and could add to this team.
Yeah, and with all of these players that are coming up, we've done due diligence and we've looked at different areas and we've looked at different writers who have kind of tipped their hat to who they think might go or who might be a good fit. And Huff comes up quite a lot as someone who would be a good fit for the Giants. So it just made perfect sense. Edge rusher is an area that we've moaned about for quite some time. As you said, Ojulari is injury prone, can't be relied on. Basham, we have no idea. We have Tamon Fox, obviously in the back end, and Whitley as well, but both raw. So this really, really highlights an area of need for us. And talking of looking at areas that need highlighting, the next one, kind of next mini splash, shall we say, is to give a little bit of long-term solidarity to the guard position, which, due to injuries and poor play, has seen 7 different starters in the 2 years Shane and Dable have been in charge. Now, we've gone for Jonah Jackson, who spent 4 years with Detroit. He only allowed 2 sacks last year, and despite an up-and-down season, saved his best performance for the divisional playoff loss against Tampa. Despite his 60.7 pass blocking grade seeming around mid-range, it's actually higher than any of the Giants' 6 guards last year. And only Glowinski bettered his run block grade. And as we know, Glowinski had a limited role last season after being dropped. Now, we've signed Jonah to a 3-year deal, 31.5 million, 9 million signing, and then 1.5, 6, and 9, plus a few non-pro bonuses in there. So not a huge splash, but a big enough splash at the guard position, but really filling a need. Not a need, but a criticality for the Giants, really.
It has, like as we mentioned before, the 2 guards are still on rookie contracts, Zudu and McKeithen. They go into the 3rd year and they just haven't really developed the way we would have hoped for. Whereas I think Jonah Jackson has proven to be an above-average starting guard in this league. And to get him at just over 10 mil per year, and he's only 27, and as you know, for offensive linemen, they can play a little bit later. I think it's just a really good mid-level, solid, above-average starter that we've been craving for. And I think that price point is just about right.
I've just realised as well that we had assigned that one to you, and I've just jumped the gun.
Right.
So you're welcome to take the next one, Kev, if you want to start firing through.
Well, I'll just quickly talk about Jermaine Eluemunor. So the Giants need to explore, at least giving Evan Neal a decent training camp battle. Eluemunor might be the best option without breaking the bank and going for one of the top players available. Eluemunor has played both tackle spots, right guard, offering versatility. And the Giants will miss Brent Bedison, who's not returning in this mock that we've done. Last season, he had 779 right tackle snaps, only allowing 28 overall pressures. And while in the run game, he shone. He also spent the last 2 seasons under tutelage of the new Giants offensive line coach, Carmen Brasillo. And he also played with him in 2019 as well, as Brasillo was a assistant O-line coach at the Patriots. So he's known him for there, and he's taken him to Vegas. So he obviously trusts him, and of course he's a Londoner as well. So like, come on, you got to look after the old London guys as well, bringing in. But I just think he's the type of player like, and he's 29 or 30, I think. So he's that type of player. That 2-year deal, 15 million. With an average of 7.5, 4.5 million signing bonuses for 4.5 million year one and 6 million year two. I think that just sort of brings in someone who can give competition. He's also has versatility across the line as well. So, worst case scenario is your swing tackle. Worst case scenario for him that he's a swing tackle, but he could push Evan Neal for that starting job, and he's proven to be capable of it. So I do like that one a lot, to be fair. And then you've gone for the next one you've gone for is helping the defensive back room.
Yeah, so one of the sort of big areas of need that we found in the team was that when you look at the cornerback room, it has an average age of 23 at the moment, which is, I think it's the second youngest in the league, or it's either the youngest or the second youngest. I know that the Packers, I think, and the Jags both have very young cornerback rooms, but we really could do with another veteran back there. And what we've done is, it might seem like an obvious pick, but it's a necessity of a pick. And we get a familiar face here for new defensive coordinator Shane Bowen by picking up Sean Murphy-Bunting. Bunting began his career at the Bucks and turned into a reasonable starter, mostly playing in the slot position. Last year at the Titans, he was asked to cover opposing teams' top receivers on the perimeter and still totaled 57 tackles, 8 pass breakups, and had 2 interceptions versus 2 touchdowns. We've given Murphy-Bunting a 2-year, $13 million deal, 6 million signing, 2.5 million in the first year, and 4.5 million in the second. There, thoughts on Murphy-Bunting there, Kev? We were quite keen on him very early, I think.
Yeah, very early. Just sort of that player, like says, 26 years of age. Bowen signed him to the Titans last year on a 1-year deal. He showed that he could play in this league when he was at the Bucks. He played well last year, considering he was going up against number one wide receivers in all teams. And I just think it's one of those ones that just makes too much sense to not do it. So let's just go ahead and do it.
So the next one was a you shout, and I agreed, and I think this is an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see what people think. So this will be the first one where I really kind of say, let us know in the comments your kind of thoughts on this one, because this is maybe not controversial, but a talking point.
Yeah, I just thought this was an interesting one. As I was looking through some of the quarterbacks, it kind of jumped out at me, and then when I went back to it again, the name always kind of stood out a little bit for me, and that's the Giants signing Drew Lock. 5 years ago, the Giants and then GM Dave Gettleman hosted Lock for a pre-draft visit, so sort of like that. He's known to the team as such. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, this episode is focused on what we could do with Jones still being the starter. And Luck here, he's be here for our insurance policy, albeit a cheaper one, especially cheaper than Tyrod as well. Yes, Luck had barely appeared in the last 2 years. His career touchdown interception ratio of 28 and 23 doesn't ignite the embers of excitement. But after seeing what Dable and Kafka did with DeVito and Tyrod last year, we expect him to be a better player. He's only missed 1 game due to injury in the last 7 seasons as well. So he's kind of shown. He's had a few injuries, but he's never missed time. He's kind of shown he's been a bit more durable. And as we said as well with Tyrod, I just think, would it be nice to bring Tyrod back? Some people think so. I just think that his injury history is just too worrying. And then to be able to give Locke 3.825 million for 1-year game, 1 million signing bonus, 100K per game. I just think that he's one of those players that he's a little bit in the mold of Daniel Jones. So like Daniel Jones light. He's able to pick up yards with his legs. He's an okay thrower. And I just think, it could be someone to come in and hopefully never play a down. But with Daniel Jones' injury history, he might have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on board with this. Did a sort of deep dive into Locke when we were talking about him. Who was the other? There were 2 others. We spoke about Jacoby Brissett, but we said he was just too expensive for what we were trying to build here. And the other one was, I cannot remember. We touted 2, didn't we, at the beginning?
Was it Tyler Huntley?
Yes, yeah, I think it might have been. And we just said that we just thought that Drew Lock was the not safer option, but kind of like the better all-round option. 2 more. Do you want to fire through the next 2, Kev?
Yeah, so the next 2 signings, we've signed Murphy-Bunting at cornerback, but our thought process was to move him back to the slot where he shone for Tampa, move him back to the slot. So we decided to sign veteran Ronald Darby, who's I think 30 or 31 years of age, just a 2.5 million contract, 1 million sign-in, 1 million salary. That means we're still young. We're still young and short-handed at the cornerback position, but Darby comes in, just brings that sort of veteran presence, a bit of like been there, seen that. I mean, a sporadic yet reliable start for Baltimore last season. A 9-year veteran can shore up the outside for us while being a great teacher and a presence in the room, especially one that needs guidance. And Hawkins as well. I mean, he'd be so good for Hawkins. Hawkins showed so much promise, but I think his youth and inexperience sort of got to him last year a little bit. So I think someone like Darby, who you can follow around and follow that veteran, be really, really good. I mean, he's not an interception machine with an average of just under 1 a year, but with 7 pass breakups in a season and 56.7 reception rate average, he's still got a bit of juice about him. And then another one we brought in, this is more of a end of roster type signing, or we wanted to go with a 3rd tight end. So we're going for another Drew here, Drew Sample. He's definitely going to be sort of a backup, pushing, not even pushing for second, but like he will be like your solid 3rd tight end. He's a great all-round tight end. He might not be flashy, but he will deliver consistent numbers when called upon. His pass blocking and run blocking is above average. And in the passing game, he might not have gotten a lot of targets, but the 81.5 reception rate and 2 touchdowns is a good return for a backup.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew Sample was another one of your shouts. And the second that I kind of started looking into it, it just made perfect sense. Your third tight end really does need to be an all-rounder. They can't just be good at one thing. No disrespect to Lawrence Cager. He was, Darren, what I liked, and wasn't really the blocking kind of tight end that we potentially needed at the time. And this really does kind of shore that up. And Ronald Darby, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was last week that we, sorry, not last week, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about our free agency wants. And he was my free agency want. And I still just think it makes sense. The Ravens backfield was so good last year, veteran, and as you said, really, really could help our youngsters. With Murphy-Bunting also being in that room, kind of gives them 2 veterans to bounce off of rather than just the one in Adoree that we had last season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's just like I said, I kept coming back to him when we were looking at doing this process, and I know that you put his name forward, and again, I just thought you don't need him to be your number 1 cornerback because Banks has proven that he is developing into a number 1 cornerback, so he doesn't need to be a number 1 cornerback. So I just thought, like, for a 1-year deal at that price point, what do we say, 2.5 million for 1 year? I just think it made far too much sense, and then bringing Drew Sample in for 2.05 million on a 1-year deal to be a really solid all-round tight end, to be a 3rd option, again, was just this is shoring up a solid team now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 last kind of signings that we've made here, much lower on the contract basis. Really looking at the sort of vet minimum that you can get here. The first one is Greg Van Roten from the Raiders. Anyone want to try and hazard a guess as to why I decided to bring him up? Familiarity signing for the new offensive coach, Brichello, as we're going to pick up the journeyman. 33-year-old could be seen as a bit of a risk with his injury history, but he did start all 17 games last season for the Raiders. Finished 11th in pass blocking grade, 18th in run blocking, and 8th overall in PFF offensive rating. He only allowed 21 overall pressures and 0 penalties from the guard position as a 33-year-old. That's outrageous, and that's the kind of cheap signing we want to hit on. Like we need to hit on these ones. And I do think that with the fact that he's been with Ricciello for the last year really helps him settle. And the last
I was
one.
just going to say, Van Roten just, again, it's just one of those ones that make too much sense not to do. Like you said, the stats you said there, but imagine like giving up 0 penalties as an interior player when you're going to get players like Donald and these big sort of like flashy D tackles now. So yeah, again, another veteran in the room because the room's very light.
And the last one was one of mine. I pulled this out of the hat, and the second I did, you were just yes. It just made sense, didn't it? How do you say his first name?
Equinemius.
He's Notre Dame, isn't he?
Yeah.
Out of ND, Equinemius St. Brown, the lesser known.
Yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah,
the lesser known St. Brown, older brother, isn't he?
Yeah.
So we're looking here, 500k signing bonus, 1.125 million, vet minimum deal there. Last season, the Giants took a flyer on a few external wideouts in free agency with Paris Campbell, Crowder, and Jeff Smith.
But you forget about them, don't you?
Yeah, none of them panned out. So what we've looked at here is with the older St. Brown is a combination player who is not only just a valuable blocker as a wide receiver, because he really does stand out in the blocking game, but as that potential big body in the red zone or short down situations that we might potentially need. It's not a sexy or exciting pickup by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to wide receivers, but it's almost something that the Giants have missed. They almost miss that person who can just come in, big body, grab a catch, get a first down, walk off the field, see you later. You might get another 10 snaps, in the passing game at least. So that pretty much rounds that out. Thoughts on St. Brown there?
Yeah, just he's 6'5", 215 pounds. He's quick enough. Like you said, he's an excellent blocker in the run game and stuff like that. And he won't set the world alight, but he's just again another solid, cheap player to come in and take vital snaps.
So that is all of our external players there. Cap after that is 15 million.
Goes quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, 376,000. So we've done this quite purposefully. So we looked beforehand at over the caps mock draft or draft pick salaries. It's so weird because it's like a massive table and it has different salaries for every single pick from 1 all the way through to Mr. Irrelevant. And it's not just the value of the pick. You then subtract a specific number times the amount of picks you have, which is why we haven't done any kind of like trades in our mock draft, and we kept it really simple because the more, yes, you say you trade back from round 2 and you pick up a 4 and a 5. Well, that's great, but it's actually going to cost you more in salary cap because you've picked more players. Yeah. And it's interesting though. So mock draft time. We've done the mock draft, obviously offline, just to make it a little bit speedier. We're already over the hour here, but I don't know how we want to work this. Kev, do you want to? I'll read out who we've gone for, and obviously just feel free to jump in at any point and give your opinion on any of the ones that I talk about, because obviously you're going to know more than I do here. So first round, pick 6. No quarterbacks on the board in the terms of the 3 that you would want. Neighbour's gone. So what we've gone for here is Rome Odunze from Washington. Giants need a stud receiver, and they kind of get the one. Maybe not the second best, but maybe like the Kev, don't comment on this because this is spoiling your rankings for next week. But maybe 1A, 1B in my early opinion, and we get one with Odunze. A physical presence, outstanding catch radius and ball tracking. He will transform the Giants' wide receiving options by giving Jones. Yes, Jones, a player who loves to dominate in contested catch situations due to his size and strength. Agree with that?
Yeah, big time. I mean, he's a 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver. All he did last year was, catch 1,640 yards and 15 touchdowns. I mean, he's a really good kid as well. Like, he's got the head and the shoulders, and he's met with the Giants this week. He's one of those players that just, he's a contested cash machine. He is a bona fide. I heard someone the other day actually say, as soon as he comes into the league, he's one of the top 15 wide receivers in the league. All wide receivers.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, so I mean, like, he is legit. And again, if in a draft that obviously has got Neighbors and Harrison Jr., you have to feel for him a little bit. But in this case, we're getting him at number 6, so you've got to be pleased with that.
Exactly. So, round 2, first pick of round 2, Kev, who did we go for?
We went, and I was kind of hoping it would fall like this, but we went for. I was tempted to pair him up with Michael Penix, pair him up with Dunze, but we went quarterback. With Drew Lock signed, we went Bo Nix out of Oregon. With Drew Lock signed at earlier comments about Jones, you might be surprised to see Nix here. However, in the draft, you can't overlook certain players that are still available, and Nix is one of them. Nix will likely need a year to sit while he improves on his drop back footwork, overall concept processing, but is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal athlete with a great arm and ability to create outside the pocket. This likely means the end for Tommy DeVito now with that crowded quarterback room.
And Jacob Eason.
And Jacob Eason. I mean, well, these are camp buddies. We did say that before. Will Tommy DeVito go back in the practice squad, or will someone want to take a flyer on him? I'm not sure, but Bo Nix is 6'2", 218 pounds. Like, he threw for nearly 4,500 yards last year with 45 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. I mean, he's just a bit of a baller. I mean, like, do you know what, right? If someone said to me, if it happens on the night, we're there watching the draft, and we get to late in the draft, and the Chiefs want to trade back or get out of that 32nd pick, I mean, I'd be ecstatic if we went into that pick and picked up someone like Bo Nix.
Yeah, so we've kind of gone the Joe Schoen way there of get the veteran presence and then also still draft. It is still an area of need for the future. Drew Lock is obviously a good player, could potentially go into a great player, but we really need to hit on someone in the draft this year. And if it's a prospect that sits, Patrick Mahomes sat for most of a year, didn't he? A sitting quarterback is not a bad thing. It's not. Great. If you believe in the prospect and it makes sense to do it, do it.
And you're not reaching here as well. Sorry, you're not reaching here in the second round. And we've got 2 second-round picks. So it feels like you're able to take that little bit more of a gamble on these.
Yep. And with our second-round pick, we took Darius Robinson, edge from Missouri. There is a high percentage chance that after the combine, Robinson shoots up boards when analysts release their updated big boards. However, with Ojulari's injury concerns being a real factor for the Giants, we could do with another edge rusher who could contribute in rotation, even with Huff signing. Robinson is unpredictable at the point of attack in pass rushing sets, giving defenders nightmares, whereas in the running game, he has a knack of being able to shed blockers and stuff plays. Is it unlikely that we would get Robinson here in a real world situation in, say, a month's time?
So no, yes, he had such a good Senior Bowl. I mean, he lined up across the whole line. That's one of the things like I loved about him here. He can line up as a 3 technique D tackle. He can line up as a 3-4 line. 3-4 D end, and he can line up as a D end in a 4-3 scheme, or even as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. Like, he's got so much versatility. He's 6'5", 285 pounds. So he's a little heavy for an outside player, but he's got such versatility. You can play him across all 4, or he can come into a really good rotation. I mean, he absolutely bossed everyone at the Senior Bowl, and that got everyone talking. And all the analysts have gone back to watch his tape at Missouri, and he's starting to get a lot of late first round buzz now. But got to stay true to this kind of draft as well. If the certain players will fall.
Yep. Yeah, and we literally just picked what was in front of us, didn't we?
Yeah.
We we took our time as well. It wasn't a rushed draft. Like, we really did have a look and see what was available, and it was just a no-brainer, really, with Robinson being there. Third round pick, Kev. You can have a big smile on your face announcing this one.
Well, the third round pick, we went for Blake Fisher, offensive tackle from Notre Dame. I mean, the former Golden Domer's physical traits, he projects him to be a solid tackle in the league. However, it will be his work in progress that will benefit from sitting behind Thomas and Eluemunor. He has a good hand placement, bursts off a line with power. It just needs refining to become a starter. He's one of those players that when it came to like, should they stay or should they go, a lot of people thought, he should stay for another year at Notre Dame because he would have moved from right tackle to left tackle. Now Joe Alt's left. And the funny thing about these two, when they came in the same year, and Joe Alt was a tight end transferring to tackle, so he was going to sit for a couple of years. And Blake Fisher was deemed to be the left tackle. But Joe Alt was turned up and was so good that they made Fisher move to right tackle and play Joe Alt at left tackle. So I think if he'd stayed, he would have gone to Notre Dame. He would have stayed at Notre Dame and gone to left tackle. And I think he would have been the end of the first round tackle coming out next year. So to get someone with that potential in the third round now that we can develop, I just hope Priscilla was able to develop him better than the previous offensive line coach. I see him as 100% a future starter at right tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. And a position of need, isn't it? With tackle. As we just said, Thomas and Eluemunor, we don't know what's going to happen with Evan Neal. Not a lot of depth behind him. So to have a rookie in that depth rotation who could end up playing, you never know with injuries, he could end up playing. Definitely the right pick at the right time there.
And I will say as well, he has got guard versatility. He has got the right body type to be able to slide into right guard and be able to play there as well.
And the versatility is exactly what Joe Schoen wants, isn't it? That's something that the Giants really do love. Fourth round pick, Marshawn Lloyd, running back, USC. If there was one thing that the Giants learned last season when Saquon was out, it was that they lacked a dynamic runner that could flip the field. Lloyd kind of fixes those issues with his combination of quick feet and power. When you then add in his solid blitz pickups and capabilities as a receiver, he could be the foil to Barkley that we've been looking for. He's a big boy. He's like a boulder, isn't he?
He is, and he's like, what, nearly 220 pounds, right? That's big. That's a big boy. But when he's only 5'9", I mean, that is like, some serious, and he's got some shift as well. Like, so I'm so interested to see what his 40 is going to be, because that will be interesting. I mean, last season he had nearly 900 yards and 9 touchdowns, and he just shows some really, really good shiftiness and stuff. And I think, like, to get a back like this, and you said it before, I agree with you. I think going forward, there's going to be running back by committees more and more, and you're going to see less of the superstar. It's quite a weak running back draft anyway, but to be able to pick up someone with Lloyd's current ability and potential at this spot, I think it's just is perfect pick at this time.
And then number 5, fifth rounder.
So fifth rounder, we've gone for Josh Newton, cornerback out of TCU. Newton might not have the elite physical traits you look for in a cornerback, but the technical side of his game will make up for any shortfalls. The former wideout possesses good ball skills, short area quickness, and reactions to receiver movements. He does show a weakness in man coverage, which would have been an issue under Wink, but Bowen prefers a more zonal approach, and it will complement Newton's play. And he's one of those players that, I thought he'd be a little bit higher. Well, people are going after him, but I kind of have him as a third rounder. I actually think he's actually good enough to go sort of like mid to late third rounder again. So to get him at round number 5, he's 5'11", 190 pounds. He only give up 4 penalties all last year. Catch rate against them is 48.1. I just think what was his 40-yard dash was I've got that today as well. Like his 40-yard dash is 4.51, which is spot on. Like, anything over 4.6 you get worried about, but for coming in at 4.51 is perfect.
Steve said 2 QBs. That's bold. I think that what has happened there is that Steve might have got your accent kind of mixed up. He said CB, not
CB.
QB.
Cornerback.
Unless Steve's watching on time delay and he's only just got to the Bo Nix pick. So
Yeah.
we'll see what's happened there, Wilkins. But
again, that's building for the future with the cornerbacks.
There you go. We're playing second fiddle to the Albion. That's
oh my
fine.
God! Unacceptable, Steve.
Just talking about Newton while we're kind of on that pick still. One big thing that everyone seems to be saying on X about this cornerback range is what's their wingspan? Wingspan seems to be the more important thing than height and weight and 40 time. How did he measure? How did he measure, Kev, at the wingspan? Have you got that there?
Got his arm length coming in. Oh, I love a spreadsheet. At 31 1/8.
And that means what?
So basically, anything over 30 is exactly what you kind of want. Anything like 32, 33 is considered excellent. So it comes in right around, exactly where you want it to be.
There we go. And there's something for everybody who can learn that with me, that arm length is a big thing when it comes to cornerbacks. And it makes sense. It does make sense when you think about it properly. It's just not something that you would think of without being prompted.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, for offensive linemen, tackles especially, arm length is massive. Height, yes, okay, 6'7", 6'5", you're not too worried about that. But when it comes to like 32, 33, 34 arm length, then you start to look at, because Justin Pugh was always said he'll have to be a guard because his arm length is just too short for the long, lankier edge rushers to try and hold them offline.
And then finally, our 6th round pick, we went for Jalen Ford, linebacker out of Texas. Selection of Ford here is predominantly one of depth, with the linebacker position being adequate but not great. And although he does display a weakness in his coverage game, we took him over another linebacker that we had the opportunity of in the 6th round because he's more of a physical tackler who is more around the run defense, pass rushing situations. And apparently very, very good mental player who deciphers, plays quickly, and is able to react.
Yeah, I like this player a lot. He's fast, he's reactive, 240 pounds, 6'2". It's a good size for an off-ball linebacker. 22 pressures last year with 2 sacks, 48 run stops, which is like phenomenal. I mean, 2 interceptions as well. Just a really good sort of athletic kind of freak that you want a linebacker coach want to get his hands on and be able to develop.
So there we have it. That is it. Before we kind of look at the rosters, let's just kind of give you like an overall thought process. The Giants need 7.8 million to sign their rookie class. So that leaves a grand total of 7.5 million left in the cap space bank for any late camp additions or undrafted rookie free agents. We might have spent slightly more than maybe the Giants are going to go for, but hell, it's our scenario. We do what we want.
Exactly.
Bear in mind as well, we haven't restructured a Karake who could free up 5 million. With the addition of Lloyd and Robinson in the draft, we could probably cut Brightwell and Basham and save another 2.5 million. So that then takes it up to 10 million, which is a much healthier slate. There's restructures that can be done. Joe Schoen doesn't like void years, but he could always go for a void year if he really needs to. So, I think we've done a pretty damn good job considering this is the first time we've ever tried this. And it's taken a lot of work to get what we've got. How do you think it all went, Kev?
Yeah, loved it.
Now that it's done.
Yeah, no, it's done. I absolutely loved it. I think I thought we were sensible in places, a little optimistic in other places. I'm very much looking forward to doing it next season with the 4 of us, because obviously it wasn't a bit of a last minute thing, and it was like something that me and you throw together. But it's nice to look at what free agents are out there, what type of money we've got to play with. Do you know what I mean? Like who can come in, who fits where, and it shows how big free agency is. Like how you go in free agency can kind of dictate the draft a little bit, especially in the early rounds. But I've enjoyed it immensely, to be honest. And I think maybe we did fix the Giants.
I mean, Steve has said can't argue with the first two picks. Anything after that is a guessing game for him. Hardly an expert with prospects. Steve, that's why we have Kev and Shane. And obviously, we've done this quite early into our prospects lists. So the further we go, the more we will get into that. And obviously, there are plans between now and the draft, once the prospects are out of the way, for Kev and Shane to give their thoughts on more like day 2, day 3 prospects that we don't always get to touch on when we do the top fives. So obviously stick with us and we'll have plenty of content coming out. So before we wrap things up, Kev, let's have a look at the rosters that we have assembled here. So we'll start with offensive 1, where we have the wide receivers, running back, tight end, and quarterback. Quite a busy little table, that one. Slayton, Wandale, Adunze sounds tasty.
Oh, it does. And then you've got like players like Hyatt and Hudgens and Equinix and Brown. And don't forget Bryce Ford Wheaton from last season, who was so unlucky with that injury. You never really got to see what he could do. And it'll be interesting to see when he comes back. Waller, Bellinger, Sample, really solid 3 tight ends. And there's a lot of promise there. I mean, like if Jones kicks on, fantastic. But you've got Knicks there to kind of develop, and Locke to come in for the odd game here and there with injuries and stuff like that. And the running back room now, with Barkley staying, Gray having another year in the system, and you got the draft pick Lloyd there as well. I mean, you got a bit of juice with Corbin, who kind of flashed a wee bit. But I just think having Adunze as a number one, an actual proper number one, takes away from Slayton. I mean, Slayton get over the top, High can get over the top, and you got Wandale, who really showed promise at the end of the last season. Get him in space with a ball in his hands, and he can make people miss and get yards.
So then if we look at our offensive line, which is always going to be an area of contention, relatively good depth there now. Eluemunor over Neal, Fisher obviously is the backup to that. Azudu back out as the left tackle backup, which is kind of where you probably want him, as opposed to pushing him all over the offensive line, really get him starting to develop behind Thomas. And then if you really think about it, there's 3 positions out of 5 on the starting lineup there that we've signed.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's got real potential. I mean, like Van Roten, you're going to get solid play. Jackson, you're going to get above solid play. I hope Schmitz takes that next step. Thomas is Thomas. You know what you're getting. I'm really interested. I mean, that right tackle battle between Eluemunor and Neal will be phenomenal. And if Eluemunor does win that, you could see Evan Neal being kicked into guard. And if Evan Neal produces at the guard spot, suddenly you've got an offensive line that could do some damage.
Exactly. And then we move to the defensive front, excluding the backfield. I mean, Huff, Lawrence, Nunez, Roches, Thibodeau, Karake, McFadden. I'm pretty over the moon with that. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, it's good front 6. Like McFadden kicked on massively last year, as we talked about in previous podcasts. Karake is legit and a legit top middle linebacker. I mean, don't be surprised that maybe like post draft and stuff. Do we look at someone like Ashawn Robinson to come back on a bit of a deal? He had a really good time with the Giants last year. He was productive. Nunez Roches showed really good play when he played. And then you got the Huff and Thibodeau. I mean, could they be the best edge tandem in the league?
Yeah, I mean, Steve's just said that front 6 looks filthy. It really does. I mean, just one thing just to point out that I've noticed, you probably swap Riley for Horn there. I think Riley could probably quite easily be a D tackle back up there. In fact, would not surprise me if Riley ends up in a rotation with Nunez Roches next season if we don't end up signing anyone else in that defensive tackle position.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely agree with that, yeah.
And then lastly, if we have a look at safeties, cornerbacks and special teams, not really anything massively rocking the apple cart. I mean, Derby is the CB. Sorry, you've got me doing it now, Steve. CB2. Derby is the CB2. Flop Murphy-Bunting would be a hell of a slot cornerback battle in camp, wouldn't it? Really would.
And I can see Monty Burfing winning that as well. And then you've got someone, 26-year-old experienced Monty Burfing in the slot. You got the savvy veteran as your number two outside cornerback. And you got the promising first-round pick from last year, Banks, developing into a number one lockdown corner. I mean, that DB room. I mean, Pinnock is above average player. He's nothing exciting. McKinney, I think, can thrive the way Bayard did under Bowen's defensive scheme. So I think he'll want to come back as well. Like I said before, once he speaks to Bowen and knows what his plans are for him, I think he'll want to play in his defense.
Exactly, and obviously bear in mind that this doesn't include any undrafted free agents or potential, like camp bodies that we could pick up on the cheap, like those vet minimum deals that aren't going to count against the 51, as Kev was saying, who potentially could just turn into something. So, yes, that safety four there, potentially not very heavy on the sort of developmental or the depth there, but I'm sure that would be addressed with something like an undrafted free agent class. And don't be surprised, really, if Owens kicks on a little bit this season. Really, really looking forward to seeing him. We were quite high on him last preseason, and I just feel like another season you could start to see him starting to push through. Anything you want to add before we get rid of that, Kev?
No, just I mean, I think like you said, Owens, massively agree with that. Belton flashed as well last year, so honestly, Belton under this new scheme, you might find some players that either drop off a little bit in this new scheme, or you might find players that will thrive and really produce and really come to the fore. I mean, I'm just so happy the special teams, like those four special teams. I mean, just getting that solid thing back. It's just something the new special teams coach doesn't have to worry now. He's got those four pillars of the special teams, and we can crack on with them. I think there's enough competition there in that DB room as well. Now that we've made those signings and draft picks.
Well, there we have it. That is all of it. That is Craig and Kev fix the Giants. Let us know what you thought about it. It was a difficult kind of project for us both, but we really enjoyed it. It would be nice to know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want more of. If anybody's interested in the nitty-gritties of the contract for the multi-year players, let us know on X, throw us a DM, whatever. We'll quite happily share that with you. Maybe next year we can do a 7-8 hour podcast where we try and do it in live time, because it bloody would take that long. Maybe next year we'll go into a bit more of the comparisons that we made between a lot of the players. We haven't spoken about some of the people that we looked at. Stephen Nelson, I fell in love with him at cornerback, but he was expensive for his age. There were probably others. We could have looked into the running back market maybe more than we did. But it's our scenario, and it's just how we kind of foresee it potentially playing out. And maybe we'll revisit in a few weeks' time once free agency's over, and we'll see how many hits we potentially got there. However, unfortunately, that is all the time we have this week. We will be back next Thursday for our draft prospect rundown return, where we have running backs, wide receivers, and the all-important quarterbacks coming up to see who maybe makes 4 and 5. That's going to be the more interesting look, I think, with the quarterbacks. And we could even have an additional analyst to help Kev and Shane break them down. We will confirm that closer to the time. Anything to add before we go, Kev?
No, just that I really enjoyed this episode. I love prepping for it. Like I said, it was the giant. He's a Giant podcast sort of went ahead and did it before I could actually suggest it to the boys. Something I've been thinking about for a while, but I think it's a worthwhile experience to kind of see what we can and can't do and the limitations. And I think going forward next year, when we do it next year, I think it'll be good to do maybe in a 3-parter. You mean you do it a bit shorter, going a little bit in depth about who we keep, why we keep them, why we let people walk, free agency, who we look at, who's more of a fit for the defense that we're running, the offense we're running, and then going to the draft and doing it. So it's been really, really fun exercise. I've loved messaging you back and forward and getting it together. It's good that we've been in the same wavelength. I've been at loggerheads saying, no, I don't want him. It has to have him. Just a really worthwhile exercise, I think. And well, thank you for doing it on a Friday night with me.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who has commented and watched along. Even if you haven't commented, it means a lot to us that you're willing to take, an hour and a half out of your Friday night, premium night. We know that. And obviously it's our second pod of the week, so we really, really do appreciate that. And that's it. End of this. Nice little exercise. Back to the draft prospects next week. My thanks, as ever, goes to Kev for joining me, to you, the listeners, and to the viewers for getting involved. Don't forget, subscribe and like. Make sure that we get our name out there. We'll see you next time. Let's go Giants.